Thanks for tuning into the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Pops.
And welcome to our college football episode. I know it's been a few weeks. We've all been out with Christmas, New Year's Day, the holidays, working, doing stuff. Finally got a little bit of time to get on the mic. So we'll go through how we're going to run this college football episode as we just finished watching last night the Georgia-Notre Dame game. We'll talk about the games that happened in round 2, but also the games that happened in round 1. You sort of got a prediction from us going into the playoffs, but then we haven't been able to reconvene. So, Pops, I'll give you the floor first. What's your general thoughts before we get into the games of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, man. I mean, now that the this weekend down to the Final Four has begun, and I think the craziest stat to me is that not a single person who got a bye in the first round, they all lost. You know, you're talking Arizona State, Oregon, Georgia, and Boise State. You know, they all had the week off, and they all ended up losing. So, I mean, that is going to cause a little bit of chaos of, you know, hey, does this make a whole lot of sense, you know, for some of these teams to get it? Is it a detriment that they're getting this time off, you know, or do they need to be playing? And I think we're going to continue to see all these different questions. You know, we were talking off script about, you know, there was the whole talk about Bama being the better team, and then, you know, they fumble against Michigan, you know, but then there's also South Carolina was begging to get in. They got whooped by Illinois, you know, so on and so forth. And then you can look at a team like three-loss team like Ole Miss, you know, who previously beat Georgia, and, you know, they beat the brakes off of Duke last night, you know. So there's so many different variables that, you know, the committee has to go through to see what's going on. And I'll tell you right now, you know, we call them idiots half of the time, and then sometimes we're like, man, you know, that was probably a pretty good choice, you know, of whatever decision it was. But overall, man, these games, I really don't feel like there's been, besides that Texas-Arizona State game that happened over the weekend, I don't feel like any of these games have been truly that close, you know, overall. And you can see the stark difference between these teams, and, you know, who's ready to play and who's not, or, you know, who's making the right adjustments. And we're seeing the sheer talent play out like right now. And that's another thing. I just read an article about Ryan Day said, hey, you know, by expanding the CFP and allowing for us to get in for Ohio State, you allowed us to peak at the right time. And now they're playing the best ball. And in my personal opinion, I don't think anybody's going to stop Ohio State potentially, you know, moving forward. So that's kind of my thoughts after watching, you know, 2 weeks. Now we're down to the Final Four.
Sorry, shut the window. First, the Ole Miss felt vengeful like that was sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
That was Lane Kiffin being like, nope, I saw how you're not going to say 0 for 3. Like, no one's going to be able to lump Ole Miss into that conversation. But for sure, Bama and South Carolina both lost. I sit back and I go, you know, you look at South Carolina, they had a break. And Saban said this as well. It's not to make an excuse for teams, but teams that didn't get into the playoff, they're not going to come out swinging. Like, using bowl games to justify the committee's things solely is dumb. It's because transfer portal happens. The whole team's in turmoil, and that's not the game they want it to be in. I don't care what anybody says. No one wants to go play in the Cheez-Its Bowl. Pop-Tart Bowl, however, maybe a little bit, but no one cares about the other ones. Like, it's fun to get away and it's fun to go play a game, but it's not, there's not a lot of meaning for it. That's why guys choose to sit out. Like, hey, I either go win a natty or I'm getting ready for the draft. That's it. And even last year, or a few years ago, Smith and Jigba was like, peace out. I'm getting ready for the NFL. I'm not going to play in the playoffs. And that was before it was 12 team. So I sit back, look at the first round. you look at, we were sort of talking text, and I think it's good to bring up. You got South Carolina sitting there. South Carolina beat Clemson. Clemson beat SMU. Those two schools getting in, you just sort of sit back. I get that they put Clemson in because they were an automatic qualifier for the ACC championship, but this is where I sit back and I think the committee, one, is going to change the buys and how that works from here on out. You won't have any automatic buys. If you are voted the 1 through 4 team, that's where you're going to be. I would also like to see the 5th team taken out of this in terms of it, and really automatic qualifiers for the playoff, even if you're a conference champ. Just because, like, the Big 12, even the SEC could have easily been a 2-loss or 3-loss team playing for it. It's just one of these ones that I don't know if you're really getting the best teams in there by a subject of default because they came out of a Power 4, which I will sit back. I know a lot of people have been saying it after Georgia got beat. The SEC is not the dominant conference that it was. And really, it was never a dominant conference. It was just that it had the team to beat, it felt like, every year with either Bama, Georgia, LSU, and if you want to go back to the beginning, Florida. Like, they've had really 3 really good schools. Tennessee, like, you sort of take a look at that first round. I'm not sure about you, but I don't know why we expected anything less out of Ohio State. There have been more questions if Ohio State had lost or struggled with that game than if Tennessee had won.
Exactly.
Just, Tennessee's biggest win was Bama, and Bama lost to Vanderbilt. Like, why are we making a big deal out of Tennessee? I sit back and look at the Texas Clemson game. It was close initially, but my gosh, Texas just ran it 290 yards through them. But we're going to get to Texas here in a minute. I'll just ask you straight up right now. What's Texas's problem on offense?
Quinn Ewers. I understand, he threw for 300 yards, but, he also got 2 overtimes, to pad the stats, including the 30-yard bomb that he threw on 4th down to the end zone. So I will say that watching the game on Saturday, for instance, he needed – I'll just take in the transition where they just scored. I can't remember the exact play, but the next possession, Quinn Ewers tries to throw a deep ball into double coverage, underthrew him, got picked off, and then the very next play, Levitt threw it to Scadaboo up the sideline, and when they got the face mask, and it ended up being 1st and goal or whatever, and they ended up scoring. It was that type of moment where his lack of composure really shone through. Like, the guy just needed to take care of the ball, and Texas was going to win that game. And what does he do? He tries to hit a home run, that worked in the very first half, but it was nowhere to be found in the second half, and I also blame it a little bit on the offensive line, and no fault of their own. They got beat up. Kelvin Banks went out early in the game, and he's an All-American tackle. So with him losing him and some other guys early on in the game, they were unable to establish a run game, and so it ended up falling all on the shoulders of Ewers to no fault of his own. Now, what I would have liked to see, and we talked about during the game, is like, why is Sarkisian running all these misdirections, putting guys in motion? Just run the ball up their throat. Like, the guys are bigger on the Texas line than ASU's line. It's just like, you got to establish this run game before you start passing. And I would put some of this on Sark as well with the time management in the game. They were throw, punt, or whatever happened, and they're not eating any time off the clock. Now, I understand we missed 2 easy, I shouldn't say easy, but field goals that should have been made. If not the 48-yarder, then definitely the 38-yarder, should have been made. And it was just overall, I think the biggest stem was that Texas was unable to establish a run game against Arizona State.
That for sure bailed him out. I think it covered up a little bit of Sarkisian's woes against Georgia, which has really pinpointed it. I would agree with you. In terms of Sark, not so much yours. Like I get he threw a bad ball into coverage at that point. One, he throws the worst deep ball there
Yes.
is. It looks
And
like a
oh,
duck that has
and
been
it's always
shot.
always underthrown too.
Yes,
Always.
always. And if there was an MVP for Texas, Golden,
Yeah.
dude, Golden's playing the best. I know they got the
Bond.
kid from say again.
Isaiah Bond.
Yes, he has been underwhelming at best for the entire season. He doesn't have the elite speed that you saw last year out of Worthy, which I think they keep trying to find, especially on these runs. And it's like they didn't have that against Arizona State. Don't get me wrong, they played extremely well once the score got close. Let's make no bars about it, though. It was 24-8. Texas had the game.
Yes.
It was a 4th and 10 bomb by Scadaboo yet again, who rightfully, in my opinion, I know it people don't like it when the team that lost wins the MVP. There was no doubt that was the best football player on the field last.
On the field, 100%.
100%. Like, he was the best player. I go back to that Georgia game for both Georgia games. Sark gets almost sort of this, I like to call it the Chip Kelly effect when he was the head coach. Like, wrapped around the idea that, like, oh, the complexity and stuff of these plays is going to work. And it's like, dude, you have one of the biggest, if not the biggest offensive line, not just in the conference, but in the nation. Use them. Like, you're pulling 2 guards to the left, a center to the right. I'm going this way and I'm running a reverse screen and I'm doing all this stuff. And it's like, dude, sometimes, like you said, just running it in between the tackles, let me tell you, it pays dividends. Like, Bama won multiple national championships early on. Why? Because by the time the 3rd and 4th quarter came there, those defensive tackles and ends and linebackers were just like, dude, they have called 34 blast 15 times, and I'm over this. Like, I'm tired of it. That, for me, we'll get to it here in a second with the matchup of them and Ohio State, but I look back to the Clemson game. Clemson came in, but the defense, number 47 for Clemson, middle linebacker, my dad called it out, and I watched him for the rest of the game. My man was on struggle island. He made one really good play on a 4th down stop, but every time from then, Texas was able to get to him and a middle linebacker, and he almost froze. Like, he didn't move. You'd see the guard pull, and it was like he paused for a second, and that second was all that they needed. Sealed him, gone. And it's how Texas had 290 yards rushing. They just got to the second level of Clemson multiple times. However, I do want to point this out because it's now the second game in a row that we've seen this, and your meme was hilarious with Georgia. It's that what's that? I forget what a million ways to die in the West. Yeah. They're up in the galley, and one guy has the noose around his neck, and he looks the other guy, and it's like Georgia, crying after blowing their lead, and it's a Texas guy with a noose, and he goes, "Oh, it's your first time," and the other guy's like, "Huh, dude, we almost saw it 2 straight weeks." Like, yeah, they blew it to Clemson. Very lucky for Texas that their goal line defense really showed up. It didn't against Arizona State. Let them back into the game. Like, and I'll address that elephant in the room. That was targeting.
Oh, 100%. So, and this was the thing that I was sitting there, trying to devise, what I was going to say about it. And it was like, I feel like this was part of the decision making. If they called it targeting and Arizona State made that field goal, everybody say, oh, it wasn't targeting, or if it, what it happened, they're still talking about it. The fact of the matter for me is that Texas put themselves in that situation to where it's like, hey, it came down to a no call for Arizona State to possibly win this game. Now, I understand it went to overtime and they could have, done the thing to win the game, and they didn't. But I do see that being one of those plays that, Arizona State should have had the targeting call on an extra 15, and this game probably would have been over had their kicker been able to make that kick.
Why was targeting invented in college football?
To help the defenseless player not to get blown up.
Well, what are they trying to prevent?
Concussions.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't want to like say it myself. I wanted you to make the point for me. Arizona kid got knocked out.
Yeah.
Like he's out of the game. The
Yeah.
thing that you were trying to prevent happen. Why helmet to helmet? What like kills me is I remember a few years ago when Ohio State in 2020 when Ohio State was playing Clemson and the Clemson player led with his head in Justin Fields' back and they kicked him out for it because it was crown of the helmet. Which I was like, when you sort of think about it, that didn't have any concussion symptoms. Like if you took a helmet to the middle of the back, don't get me wrong, Fields was hurting from his ribs being hurt. But if that dude had hit him with the face mask, he still would have hurt his ribs pretty good. Didn't have a back protector on. I sit back and look at this, and it's like my man he was defenseless and caught a helmet, regardless of whether it was the exact crown or face mask, in his dome, completely unprotected, and it rattled him. He had a concussion. He didn't come back for the rest of the game, and you can't sit back and tell me that didn't affect Arizona State for the rest of the game. They didn't have a wide receiver. Like
100%.
they were already down one.
Yep.
Lost another one. That was the whole purpose of the rule, was to protect guys' brains. And that kid got destroyed. And then in the end, they were still like, yeah, not a penalty. Which I don't like the targeting call just because, and the reason I say this, there are clear targetings, like where a dude launches with his helmet, like, getting thrown across a room purpose, like you can tell when it's intentional, like absolutely get that out of the game. But where like a guy is catching and spins, out of a tackle and a guy's like running in full steam and it just like in that moment, there's no ability to like change trajectory. Like you're there. He just spun into it. You shouldn't kick a guy out of a game for that. If you want to throw 15 yards unnecessary roughness, do it.
Yeah.
But I think there's like a subjectiveness to it. But the rules of it say any forcible contact to the head and neck area for a defenseless player, there doesn't have to be this upward thrust, the crown of the helmet, none of that. It's just contact in the head and neck area. He should have been gone.
And I think we said it best. The refs made a business decision for the grounds crew not to pick up the water bottles when Texas started throwing stuff onto the field.
Oh, I was waiting. Yeah, Arizona State just didn't have enough water bottles to throw on the field last year. So, we talked about Texas. Before we get into Ohio State, we'll take a look at the bottom of the bracket. So, Penn State just absolutely. I'll start off with this. I apologize to Penn State fans. Which I think we all slammed Penn State for a while, just saying that they were going to be this benefit of sneaking into the playoffs when they didn't belong. Granted, they have had the easier road. They got 100%. To play SMU, who looked bad against Clemson, yet again looked awful. Of all the teams that played week one, I think SMU looked the worst.
Yeah, 100%.
2 pick sixes. Ohio State's running just absolute train on teams. So Tennessee didn't play well, but SMU played far worse. And then they went and played Boise State and really shut down Genty, which it was the first time that we've seen a team really do. Oregon gave over 200 yards up to him, which now isn't saying that much after watching the game 2 nights ago. But Penn State's made it. Penn State has a chance to play for a national title for the first time since Paterno. They're in a good position when you look at them. I think they've played pretty well. My question is does the defensive end Carter, is he going to be healthy enough to play against Notre Dame? If he's not, that's going to hurt them. I don't think Notre Dame, we can get to them here in a second, has the most potent of offenses, and it really showed up last night. When you sort of think about it, Notre Dame got a free 6 right before half because Georgia got aggressive with the backup QB, and then they took a kickoff all the way back to the house. And outside of that, they had 2 field goals, like in the second half.
Do you know how many yards passing Riley Leonard had last night?
I don't.
I think it was 94.
Oh, I was going to say at least 100. Goodness. How many yards rushing did he have?
80.
80.
Sorry, he only had 90 passing, 80 rushing.
I don't see, this is where I'm like torn because I like Notre Dame's defense, but I sit back and after, especially hearing that, even watching the game last night, I really think Penn State's got a really good chance.
Yeah.
Like
I,
if they
I
can
think,
not turn the ball over.
and that's the thing. That's the one thing that Boise State really shot themselves in the foot about. They had 4 turnovers that game. That's one thing that you're not going to be able to do. And honestly, this was my biggest question mark of how Genty actually going up against bigger competition was going to do. And I had the same thing with Scattaboo. Like, I did not think in the first half, you go back and look, Scattaboo had, I think, 40 yards. Like, that was it. He just had 40 yards, um, and then he ended the game with almost 300. Like, the dude's just absolutely unreal. And Texas was able to shut him down in the second half, let it go. I was expecting the same out of Genty. And I mean, yes, he got 100 yards, but when you're talking about a guy who's about to break Barry Sanders' record, you would expect, going against greater competition. He already put up 200 against Oregon. I know he played all those Mountain West teams, but it's like he should have the caliber to be able to do that. And Penn State was able to find a way to shut him down. Now, the real question is going in this week against Notre Dame, will Penn State be able to hold them down? Because, I mean, the run game is their primary method of attack, too. So I think if Penn State is able to shut down the run game of Notre Dame, I see Penn State having the opportunity for big game James to finally make it.
Yeah, and going all the way back to the beginning of Notre Dame's run against Indiana, we all had questions about Indiana. Indiana, in my opinion, made it worse with their coach, who would not shut up. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I take appreciation. Like Saban, he was on game day and said it where he's like, I refuse to let players talk garbage. He actually had this great quote of whistling by the graveyard. He's like, if you're too nervous to walk through the graveyard, he's like, usually you start whistling because you're just like, you're scared of the bodies that are in there. And he's like, that's usually what leads to this talking. Indiana talking all that smack, and then really, yes, they scored 17. They were not in that game from the get go. That was a absolute whooping. Notre Dame against Georgia. I sit back and look at them. Georgia has a couple turnovers, both inside the red zone, uncharacteristic. Georgia gives up an opening kickoff the second half. I haven't seen that happen against Georgia. It I can't tell you the last time. And then Georgia could not tackle last
No.
night, which hats off to Notre Dame. Notre Dame wrapped up. Like Notre Dame played terrific, getting to a first career start quarterback, made him feel pressured, and they made him pay for it. At the same time, I sit back and look at Notre Dame. You can't sit back and tell me they played great defensively with that bomb that was dropped by
Well,
Georgia. Had chances.
yeah. I mean, it bounced off his chest. Like that was one ball that I guarantee. I mean, you saw it in the receiver. He was down and crying right then and there. And I say just the penalties too, man. I mean, both sides. They came at inopportune times. Like, for instance, one time Georgia was trying to go on 4th and 2. They got a false start late in the game. Ended up being 4th and 7, and then they still went for it and didn't convert. So there was times like that this kind of stuff happened, but also Georgia still put up 300 yards of offense. They just were unable to capitalize, with the moments that they were given. And I think Penn State should be able to capitalize on that. There's always been question marks about Drew Aller, but as long as they're able to get the run game going um, for Penn State, like they're a balanced team that doesn't need to rely so much on Aller. But when they do, I mean, shoot, his best weapon is his tight end. Tyler Warren had 2 touchdowns in this game, and moving forward, I think we will finally see if Notre Dame truly is who they're supposed to be. Because playing a Carson Beck less Georgia, yes, we've said it all year that Carson Beck just isn't that good, but it goes back to that whole statement of if Stockton was better than Beck, he would have been playing all season. And they even brought it up was that Stockton just didn't know the slide protections and everything else to call in certain moments. And, Notre Dame was able to capitalize on that where Carson Beck maybe would have been able to make a difference.
You just remember what you just said right now when we talk about Arch.
Sounds good.
The thing with Notre Dame at Penn State that I sit back, we'll get into that here in a second, but I'll put it out there right now, is the offensive, what you laid out of Notre Dame's production on offense. If there's going to, it's the reason we thought they were going to get beat by Georgia, which it, I want to bring, I sent it to you guys in text about Georgia. Me and Maul saw it. He was at the house and watching. Georgia's trailed in not out before this game had trailed in 9 games this season. Like, so they trailed to the University of Massachusetts. Like, very uncharacteristic for Georgia. That they are not the Georgia that we saw 2 years ago against TCU. Just absolute whoop them. Like, you put that same Georgia team that was on the field last night in any of the last 3 years, and I really think they probably have 4 more losses during the regular season. It's not a good Georgia team. Are they better than most? Yes. Still lost to Bama, still lost to Ole Miss. Did they win the SEC championship? Sure did. But a lot of the problems that Georgia exhibited all year showed up last night. Finally, Ohio State. So we got into them. Really, it was a surprise. I think that it wasn't a surprise they beat Tennessee. It was how efficiently they did it coming off the Michigan loss. And then I think another huge point, which you made at the beginning of the episode, is that every single team that had a first round bye lost. Oregon came out the gate awful, 3 and outs. And then they had zero answer for Jeremiah Smith. I mean, I don't know if you heard the Pat McAfee thing when he was doing it live. He's like, gentlemen, there's only one thing that can stop Jeremiah Smith tonight. And it's sort of quiet. He goes, the back of the line of the end zone. Like, it was true because he was torching them. And a lot of people said it, and I agree with him. If he was coming out in the draft this year, he'd be the first guy off the board. He's that type of difference maker at the position of wide receiver, what we've seen this year. Oregon, what do you think? I'll give you my take first, and then I'll let you finish it off since you already know what I said in text. Let's take a look at like Oregon in itself. Were they the number 1 team in the nation? Yes. Why? I would argue first it was not love, it was a lack of options. They were the only undefeated team. They had beaten Ohio State. Hats off. Who was their other big win? Can't tell you. Boise State, a team that they almost lost to. They only won by 3. And you also have to remember the same team that came off just squeaking it by of Idaho have a 1-point victory over Ohio State, which I think a lot of people would tell you that if he had slid a little bit earlier, Ohio State wins that game. It's just
fact. Yeah, because Will Howard didn't know what he was doing the last 18 seconds of that game.
Correct. Like, Oregon won, but it was not by force. It was a matter of sort of luck and timing. Then Oregon goes and just absolutely struggles with Wisconsin. Can't put them away. And it was sort of this like, we'll see. Then they play Penn State. And did they look convincing on offense against Penn State? 100%. Yeah. But they also gave up.
Stop a leak.
Yeah, 37 points. They got some turnovers and put their offense in good positions. But we were all sort of sitting back like, man, Oregon's defense gave up a lot. And then to turn it into the game, I just remember I was sitting there and it was like 31-0. I was like, I'm just going to go do something else with this game's over. Like, unless Ohio State just chooses to not come out on lock, like Ohio State to come back from 31, Ohio State would have to do absolutely everything wrong in the second half.
Ryan Day would have been left in California.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. They would have strapped him to the next plane and been like, I don't know what FCS, program you're going to take over, but good luck in Portland State or wherever you end up, because it ain't going to be here. Ohio State's dominating. And what are your thoughts on Oregon? Just, a 41-21 deficit. I feel like if anything, it's going to be Phil Knight. You're going to have to spend a lot more money to catch up now.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird too because Dan Lanning's been praised as, the defensive guru, came out of the Saban tree, a little bit of Georgia under Kirby Smart. And yeah, like these last couple of weeks, he hasn't been able to stop anybody, and it showed. Like the thing that I was just sitting here thinking while you were going on your diatribe, there hasn't been a single conference champion that's still alive in the bracket right now. We haven't talked about that either. So I think that is pretty alarming as well. That title doesn't truly mean anything. If anything, look at the teams like Ohio State. They did exactly what you would want a team to do and get re-prepared, refocused when everybody else was playing their conference championships, and they've been smacking dudes in the mouth ever since. I don't know what happened. I don't have much to say about Oregon. I mean, it just Dylan Gabriel still put up 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Like I just that defense for Oregon did not have a single answer. For Jeremiah Smith, and uh, I think personally, Will Howard has finally been able to figure out the system. I going to the Michigan game, we talked about them slowing it down, playing against Michigan versus anybody else this year. It was a very bad loss, and the team just did not look like they were executing in any way, shape, or form. But these last couple of weeks, man, Will Howard, uh, he hasn't been able to miss. And when you got a guy like Jeremiah Smith going off for 187, 2 touchdowns, good luck. I think the good news for Texas is that their All-American DB is going to be one-on-one with him all week next week. But I still think this guy's going to put up tremendous numbers. And I mean, if we want to roll into that preview, if you're done talking about all the other games that we've missed, I'm here for it.
Yeah. I'll let you take over first. You're the Texas fan. What's the chances for Texas to pull off the shocker right now? Ohio State's -6 favorite.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so. Like based on the Texas that we've seen the last couple of weeks, I said it at the very beginning of this game. You sent out that text message of, "Oh, this is going to be ugly," and I was like, "It's too early for me to make a comment on this game." And sure enough, like look exactly what happened. That's exactly like I eventually did the little side eyes, after Arizona State came back, like that's what we've been seeing this whole entire season. We saw it against Vandy. We saw it a little bit against Arkansas before you put them away. Clemson started to come back. They just didn't have an answer for our run game with Wisner. He was just running left and right on them all day. But Arizona State, man, they almost did it. And, we can talk about that targeting call all day long. There's plenty of other options. For me personally, I texted you guys this, and I get it. Arch is young, but Quinn misses easy throws. He misses guys wide open, should be a layup, and he overthrows them. It's a constant thing for him. And, it's throws that keep the drive alive. And instead, when he goes to try to throw the long ball, he underthrows every single time. And man, it paid off in that 4th down scenario in overtime, when he threw it for the touchdown. But other than that, my man can't throw a ball over 40 yards, in my personal opinion. Going into this weekend, I mean, Jahdae Barron's got his work cut out for him. I know he's an All-American DB. He's the best guy on the defense for Texas. Their line is the D line is going to have to get home before Will Howard has the time to set up and throw to Jeremiah Smith. Like that's the only way that Barron is going to get any sort of help on the island. I am glad that we do have an All-American out there, but I know we've talked about opponents and who they've played, but just overall watching them in a playoff atmosphere, Ohio State is just smacking everybody in the mouth. And I truly believe, I don't necessarily say 6.5 is going to do it, but I see Ohio State winning this game just because Texas is not, they're not producing on offense. I mean, we talked about it at halftime. All that they put up 10 points at halftime, because they had the wheel route for the first touchdown, the two plays for a touchdown on that first one. And then they had a field goal later on because the other one was the punt return for a touchdown. So, or was it kickoff? I can't remember. Punt or kickoff, one or two. Yeah. And their offense was not driving. They had the same amount of yards as Arizona State at halftime, and Quinn's going to have to do something. Arch didn't come in and play a single snap this Arizona State game, and I assume this is going to be the same for the Ohio State. The one thing that I don't like is every time that Arch has come in, it's been a run play. Like he's been like the Tim Tebow of Texas. He only comes in and runs, a quarterback power or a draw, something like that, each and every time. So if as the opponent, when Arch comes in, he's going to run it, like that doesn't really give you much of an advantage there, Sark. So I'd like to see some changes. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think they're going to be able to show up. I think it's going to be a lot like the Georgia game. They're going to get down early and just never be able to come back.
If the Texas offense that we've seen, I would argue, from most of their big games this season, the 2 playoff games and against Georgia, shows up, -6 will be too little. It'll be a 2-touchdown game. Just plain simple. The hope I have for Texas is the best defense for a good wide receiver core is what? It's a good pass rush.
Yeah.
If you can get home to the quarterback, I sit back and think about, I know this is merging college and pros. The one guy to beat Mahomes in a Super Bowl was Brady. Brady and them scored, but Mahomes became one of 3 Super Bowl teams to not score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. Why? Because that defense got home. Yes. And that is the message. You will either win us this game or you will lose us this game. No in between.
I will say, sorry, I'll let you finish that diatribe. I will say they were getting to Levitt. Levitt is a lot more mobile of a quarterback than Will Howard is. So I think that's going to be an advantage moving forward, but I'll let you get back.
I still don't think they can let Will Howard just have free roam.
100%.
He's fast enough to make a first down. Like, that's the killer. Mahomes, because I think Howard and Mahomes, I would say, are on par. It's never this like Lamar Jackson run. It's just it's 3rd and 13 and he picks it up. It's killer. You just can't have it. Like, Texas has a good defensive line. I think that it's between them and Notre Dame for first in terms of just defense. Like, I really like their defense. Ohio State has a good defense too. There are times from Ohio State that you don't see it. Now that you've seen it the last 2 weeks, they've just blasted teams like it was no problem. Texas, on the other hand, the thing that hurt them against Georgia, the thing that hurt them against Arizona State was their inability to run the football. They kept wanting to attack the edges, and it was like, guys, it ain't working. Like, I think that Sark forgets that his back does not have elite speed on the edge.
Yeah.
Like, he's not Bijan. He's not even the poor guy that got hurt with the ACL last year. Brooks. Like, he doesn't have it. He does have really good speed once he gets to the 3rd level, but he doesn't have this like immediate first step, he's gone type of speed. It's in between the tackles. Mm-hmm. And the other reason I say the thing I told you got to take away possessions from OSU. If you're expecting Texas to win a 42-35 game, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Texas wins by defense. They have to have that show up. My question for Sark is, this is going, like, I feel like this is Kirby before beating Saban, is, can Sark win the big game? Because I think that people would have really, sort of like people wanted to run Ryan Day out, if he had lost to Clemson or lost to Arizona State, there were going to be a ton of questions in the room.
Oh, 100%.
Like, that would have been a really bad loss. No one viewed Arizona State as the 4th best team, and no one viewed Clemson as the 12th best team. They were winners by default.
Fact.
This is Sark's moment. Can you show up? Because I think everyone last year really believed, myself included, they were going to beat Washington.
Yeah, and then it ended up in a shootout, and Penix was able to, connect with the Dunze.
So from a coaching, Sark, I still remember Sark with Bama the year they won in 2020. He had some amazing play calls. Just really had a defense off their toes. Just he tortured Ohio State for that whole thing. That gives me a little bit of hope because this is now the second time he's going to see Ohio State.
Mhm.
He's seen Ryan Day before. He's seen this play out once. Can you figure it out? Can you give some plays to make it happen? Someone outside of Golden, who I don't know what your tight end's name is. I really like him.
Gunnar Helm.
Helm plays great.
Yeah.
They're going to need a big game out of him. And Golden is going to continue to have to make big plays. They need Isaiah Bond to catch some. They need to hit, he needs to be the drag route, the mesh point, the jet motion. I need to see Isaiah Bond come out and have a good game for them to win. Golden will keep them in the game and will make big plays, but someone's got to step up. Someone's got to step up for Texas for them to win. If you ask me right now who's going to win, it's Ohio State. I don't feel like it's going to be close.
Yeah.
Other game. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the only other piece is hoping that Chip Kelly is not that good at calling a game plan this weekend. Because Chip Kelly's their OC.
Oh, yeah. The thing I want to say about that is Ohio State scored on very big plays.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by big plays is just long plays. Had a running back take off for 7 yards. Jeremiah Smith caught like a 55-yard or something bomb. Those two scores alone made it 31-0. Before that, and I think it was his second time scoring that game. When you go back and you watch Chip Kelly with Mariota against Ohio State, the thing that killed them was a 3-and-out because it's just they're on and off the field. And that's why I just sit back for Texas. If you can just hold on to the ball, if you can have long drives, because what's nuts is that's what Arizona State did.
Yeah.
Dude, it wore down Texas defense. By the time fourth quarter came around, it was like, yeah, you're winning. But Tech's been on the field all day. That has to change. You can't have that. And it just throws an offense off. If you haven't thrown a football in 10 minutes, with a route, and it's now the pressure's back on, it's the play call just wasn't great. And now you're looking at 3rd and 9 and you're off the field again, and Texas keeps the ball for another 5 or 6 minutes. Dude, that's how Texas wins. What else you got on Texas? Ohio State.
Man, honestly, I'm not ready to admit it, but I think, this is going to be the weekend that Texas season ends. I'll just be dead honest. Looking at it, on paper right now, I think this is the weekend that Texas gets beat unless their defense is able to stay strong in the second half. Because, 3 points at halftime for Arizona State. And then you look at that final score and 2 overtimes, and you're just like, what happened? It's just, you just called it. They just got beat down over and over and over again because, Arizona State, I will admit, they did very well at getting to 3rd and 3, 4th and 1. They were good at doing that, and you knew exactly what was about to happen, and exactly what happened. They did get stopped a couple of times, but very rarely when they went for it. They always seem to get the conversions, so Texas just has to play a little bit sharper, obviously going up against Ohio State, and I don't think they'll be able to do it.
The winner of this game, in my opinion, wins the Natty.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that.
And that's the only reason I'm down on Texas right now. It's not because it's Texas. Don't get me wrong, Texas hasn't played great. But they're just playing a team right now that, as you pointed out at the beginning, Ryan Day said was peaking, and he's correct. They've hit their stride.
Yes.
The other thing to Ohio State, which it's not me trying to take anything away from Ohio State. Ohio State is the best team in the playoff right now. I'll say that, plain and simple. They have mastered getting out up early. 17-0 before the first quarter's up, and you're just like, Like, you can just feel the air get sucked out of the stadium on the Oregon and Tennessee side, just because it's like, dude, the game that we thought we were going to be in, we are getting smacked. And it's even down 17 is tough to come back from. Like, much less 31. And that's what happened is team got a little bit behind and fell into a hole, and it was over before it ever got the half. And I sit back and I look at Texas. That's the key, is can you just keep it close in the half? The longer you hang around, the more that your guys will believe.
Yep.
The more that Ohio State will start to doubt themselves. If you can make it that type of game, great. But if Texas comes out and we're sending those eyes looking back and forth in text messages because Texas is just letting Jeremiah Smith have a way, dude, it's over. Texas
100%.
won't come back.
Yep.
Other game. Right now, Notre Dame's -1.5 against Penn State. Where are you sitting on this game?
I mean, overall, if I had to say, I would prefer Notre Dame to win just because if Ohio State had to play Penn State, we've seen this play out the last decade. And I do not just want to see James Franklin get absolutely embarrassed in the Natty by the team he's never been able to beat. And that's my honest to God truth. But man, I think we already hit the nail on the head a little bit. Penn State's just got to stay balanced. I think they're overall the better team based on the way that Riley Leonard played last night. Notre Dame had 10 plus penalties. The only difference was they were playing, a second string quarterback, and they turned the ball over less than Georgia did. So, and Penn State's playing the best football right now. And like I said, I think Kayvon Allen is their running back, Trayvon Allen maybe, and then he's been getting 100 plus these last two games, and when you can rely on that, and then Aller only has to throw every once in a while, dude, you're going to win, in my opinion. And the one thing that is going to be the difference maker is that Penn State will finally play a defense in this game. That's going to be the biggest thing, is how will the Notre Dame defense play? Because we all know that Riley Leonard is so inconsistent. You don't know which version you're going to get. I mean, shoot, last night he had 170 yards total. Half was rushing, half was passing. So you can't win with a guy like that without some sort of, running back or, a great defense, in my personal opinion. And I think this game will rely heavily on Notre Dame's defense going against Drew Aller.
The offense for Notre Dame is the biggest concern for Notre Dame staying in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we've said it this whole time is it's really, can James Franklin get them over the hump? I think Penn State has talent. I think they do have more talent on offense than Notre Dame has on offense. They're pretty comparable defensively. I would sit back and if I was Ohio State, Penn State's not the team that I want to play. And I say that just because you had to play them once.
Mm-hmm.
I think, look at Ohio State, Oregon. Clearly they had lost. They were coming out. They knew it cost them the first time. They were going to make sure that it didn't cost them the second time. Penn State lost to Ohio State once this season. They know exactly how they lost. They will do everything in their power to make it not so again. That, to me, is a lot different than playing a team that you haven't played before. There's a little bit more to it. With Penn State, Carter coming back is huge if he plays against Notre Dame. And then I really like Penn State's ability to run the football, which Georgia had chance. Like, Frazier ran well. It was the fact that Notre Dame loaded the box because they were like, no, if you're going to beat us, it's going to be a backup quarterback. Like, we will take our chances downfield. And they did. I mean, my man had a wide open touchdown that was just dropped in single man-on-man coverage.
Off the chest.
Yeah, off the chest. The only person that's feeling worse about that game last night is poor number 39 Parker Jones. He's probably not on a team right now after getting a penalty for being in sweats. Stay on the sideline. Ooh. The game is in Miami, which I didn't even bring up, which we should. That is a huge advantage for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The game is in Jerry's World. If this game is not 70% Texas fans, I will be disappointed. It should be a road environment for Ohio State. That's the way it was when Bama came and played Georgia in the national championship. And really, anytime anyone plays Georgia here in Atlanta, it is 70% Georgia fans because they didn't have to pay for a hotel or flight or anything else. They're driving home after the game. I will spend whatever extra money I need to go to this because that's all I have to spend.
Yep.
That and a parking pass and whatever I'm going to eat and drink at the stadium. It should be loaded. The Penn State Notre Dame game's in Miami, the Orange Bowl. If the weather is bad, I really feel like it doesn't help either team more than the other, maybe because both teams run. Mm-hmm. Like Lincoln or Riley Leonard is the key to the game more than Penn State's offense. Because if they can stop him from running, I didn't know that he didn't throw for even 100 yards against Georgia. But it's not surprising when you think about it. It's 6-3 right before half. Stockton fumbles on a strip sack. Very next play, 6.
Yep.
Opening kickoff, 6. Second half. Immediately down 20-3. Georgia scraps their way to get within, 7 or 10?
10.
Penn State takes the ball, drives down, gets a field goal there. But Penn State's offense Notre Dame's offense really couldn't move the ball great on Georgia. Georgia made some really good plays, and Notre Dame did make good plays. Like, they broke tackles. Georgia was theirs. Like, they just didn't wrap up, and they couldn't set the edge at all with Notre Dame last night. If I'm Penn State, I treat them just like Boise. You ain't running to beat us. You can throw, and if we lose by the hands of a quarterback who really hasn't proven it all year, we'll lose. That'd be my mindset going in if I was Penn State. Mm-hmm. In Notre Dame, you just got to open it. It's one of those where it's sort of like a cat that's caught in a trap. Like, it's just one of those ones that I will do whatever it takes to get out of this. Like, mm-hmm. If I got to run trick plays, whatever, the entire playbook is open for discussion, which I think that they did a good job of last night with the 4th and 1 call. Now, I got offset by Georgia jumping off sides, but it was like, we will take our chances. Mm-hmm. He went
and it paid off.
And it did. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. They went before they kicked that field goal, they went for it on 4th down to extend the drive to try to make it a 3-score game to where Georgia would have really been out of it. They had to settle for a field goal after they couldn't get it to a 4th and manageable. Notre Dame was willing to take the risk that it took to win the game. Georgia tried, but like you said, they failed on 4th and 2.
Well, and that was the thing too that I was going to bring up. There was one point that I remember specifically. There was 10 minutes left. Georgia had the ball. They went for it on 4th down, and they were in the red zone. I can't tell you the exact yardage, and they went for it. And I was just like, 10 minutes is left. You've got all your timeouts. Why don't you take the 3? At that point, it would have made the game 23-13. And I get it. It's still a 2-possession game. But, to me, it just did not make sense for Georgia. Because I think it was like a 4th and 6. And it did not make sense for Georgia to go for it versus just taking the 3 points and trusting in their defense. Because the defense went 3 and out on the very next possession. So I did not understand, the choice to go for it there. That late in the game versus taking the points. But obviously they didn't score again, so it doesn't truly matter. It was just one of those decisions, again, just like the early on decision to go for it, on your side of the 50 early in the game. I think obviously Kirby's going to learn from it just like any smart coach does, but I definitely think last night's game was the sloppiest out of all the ones that we saw this past weekend. I say weekend this week. I've been on break too long.
I know you're a Texas fan wearing a Big Ten shirt right now.
Hey, I still respect the Illini. All right.
The quarter. I said this to Mo. I have not. I didn't. This is a little off topic. It's more. I think whoever's quarterback plays the best wins. That's the ending point. Is in a
So
year of quarterback.
give it to Penn State.
It's just we haven't seen great quarterback play all year. I said this with Milrow, and I just want to throw it out there, get your vibe on it. You know, me and Maul did an episode a while back that was talking about like the devaluation of the running back position. And I sort of thought of this when we were watching the Alabama game, and I was like, you know, and I told it to Maul, and we talked about it, and I'll give you the opportunity as well. Milrow's not a great quarterback. He's a tremendous athlete, super nice guy. I hope he does well, but from the position of a quarterback, he's not it. Probably a great running back, honestly.
For sure.
But I sit back and I'm like, what's the benefit of being a running back anymore? Like, the NFL doesn't value you. You're not going to get paid. The second you show any type of regression, you're gone.
You're done. Yeah.
The Giants were willing to get rid of Saquon, and he luckily got picked up by the Eagles and has had a great year. But the Titans get rid of Henry. Where's the money going? It's quarterback. So if I'm an athletic guy and I have any ability to somewhat throw a football, why in the world would I not go play quarterback? Which I think is like what we're seeing. We're seeing, and it's great for a college team because a super athletic guy, like if Milrow was a better passer, Bama doesn't lose.
For
just
sure.
because I don't know who you guard him with.
Yep.
Like he's that much of a dynamic guy. Now, due to his inability to pass, they just load the box. When you have to make 9 guys miss instead of 1, it's a lot harder. What do you think on that statement? Like, I just sort of think that this is like why we've led to the quarterback play in the NFL. Like, it's more about like, are you an athlete than are you a quarterback?
Dude, you know the one quarterback that jumped in my head about who should not be a quarterback after you saying that?
Mm-mm.
Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. I'm just like looking at this guy. It's like he's only there because he looks like Mahomes and his dad is on the coaching staff. Like, I understand he was committed to Georgia, yada, yada, yada. But, like, the guy has not shown a single ounce of him being this elite number 1 quarterback coming out of high school like he was supposed to be. You know, and it's just like, is this going to be the rest of our lives of football? Like, are we going to continue to see this play degrade, you know, from the standard that was set, you know, from, you know, what we got to watch? You know, like, I saw the tail end of, you know, Steve Young, Elway, you know, Favre, like growing up through those guys, transitioning into the Bradys, the Mannings, the Brees, you know, into Rodgers. And it's just like, man, like what we see today, don't get me wrong, like Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, like Herbert, those guys are fantastic. But it's like the rest of the guys were just like, what are, and I think, you know, it's been said plenty of times, just like you elaborated on, but even Brady was like, these guys suck. You know, like in the most political Fox, you know, reporting that he could, you know, is like, this play is just so terrible. And you know, these guys are just system guys now because they learn a system and that's it. You know, versus truly understanding the position. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, if I am a freak athlete, you know, and I can make every cut, I can make every catch, you know, whatever it is, you know, I'm jumping over dudes backwards like Saquon. Like, why would I play that position to put my body on the line to get, you know, 30, you know, 15 to 20 million less a year than the guy throwing the ball? You know, why? And I think another prime example is like, you, Saquon, look at his touchdowns compared to Jalen Hurts. How many times have they done the tush push? You know, Saquon has gotten them to the goal line, and Sirianni gives it to Jalen Hurts. Like, I get it. Saquon seems like a very fantastic teammate, but I'd be pissed. You know, it's like, I brought us down here, dog. Like, I still got it in the tank. Hand it off to me. Let me get this 1 yard. You know, like, I agree with everything that you said. Like, there's no value to being a running back anymore, unfortunately.
I see it with Milroe declaring for the draft. If he goes in the first round, like,
Yeah.
happy for the kid. Like,
Oh
let me
yeah,
make that clear.
awesome for him.
Awesome. Like, you did it, man. Like, your first round pick. Whoever's drafting him, it's sort of like Will Levis. Like, there's more than enough film that I'm like, hey, man, there's some problems here. Like, there's enough. And I'd say the same with Carson Beck. He declared Carson Beck can't unread his first read.
Yeah, exactly.
Quinn Ewers cannot throw a deep ball. For his life, cannot throw a deep ball. Like, and don't get me wrong, he's hit them. But, like, I think it was you that said it, and I can't unsee it now. If you're listening, next time you see Quinn Ewers throw a deep ball, if you close your eyes until the pass is released, you'd believe it was a punt. You said it looked like a punt, and it's the truest thing in the world. Like, I can't unsee it now. I just sort of, I agree with you. Like, when you look back, like, the last sort of guy coming out of college that I was like, man, this guy's like one of those like elite passers was Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Joe Burrow within his own right as well. He had one good year. Luck had a bunch. But it's like, don't get me wrong, the guys are still mobile. They can still get out of the pocket and run, but it's not their primary set. Like, and Raiola's a good thing in terms of his size. It's like, yeah, he's a big kid. And it's one of those ones that's like, if you're too big to play wide receiver because you're just not going to have that elite speed, or maybe you don't have the hands, running back sort of that next best option. Well, if you can somewhat throw a football, that's what a high school coach is going to play you at. Why? Because now it makes you've got the ball in your hands every single time. So if the pass isn't there, do what you do best: run.
Exactly.
Like, and guys get away with it in high school because Texas, don't get me wrong, they converted. They should have had no business in converting that port. They had the right defense. He had a single safety over the top. And you are taught as a single safety over the top that on the snap of the football, where's your first step?
Should be back.
Back. Watch it. First steps forward. And then he stops. He gets caught up in all the eye candy. And Ewers is like the ball's out of his hand by the time he turned around. It's over. But if he had played deep, at worse, it's a tip ball incompletion. Should have been a pick. Like, never should have been there. Like, hats off to Texas. He made the throw. It was there. Made it, caught it. Texas ended up winning the game. But, dude, like, there are just times that you sit back and you watch and you go, we got to be kidding ourselves here with some of this stuff. So, that's the hot take. So, I guess we're both in the same boat. Ohio State's winning this.
Yeah, I believe so. 100%.
We'll find out after this week's games. You got anything else before we sign off?
No, man, that was good.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys after the semifinals to give you a check-in before the national championship game.